It's Monday night, and you know what that means. The Jersey First Television Network proudly brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly, I continue to be the generational talent in Garden State media, and certainly the hero you need right now, folks, now more than ever. Fernando Uribe, wishing you all a happy Monday. Happy Martin Luther King Day as we observe the birthday of one of our history's greatest civil rights advocates and leaders. And of course, most importantly, just having the day off from work. I mean, that's really what matters to me, I think, as well as everybody else. So again, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on the Jersey First Facebook page, as well as all of our social media platforms. And speaking of which, if you haven't done so already, what are you waiting for? Take a few seconds, make sure you like, comment, and share tonight's episode. And of course, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. And also make sure you subscribe to Jersey First TV on YouTube. You'll be automatically notified of all of our great content that drops every week here via Jersey First TV. And of course, folks, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and you'll see all of our great content that's really leading the way and being the leader in fearless independent media. Folks, that's always Jersey First TV. And I can't say it enough, ladies and gentlemen, front and center here, leading the way, always educating and advocating for the residents of our great state here in New Jersey. Of course, it is Real Talk with Fernando Uribe and Jersey First TV. Of course, check your local listings for start times live every Monday night. As folks, this journalism here never relaxes, never rests, never sleeps. Can't say the same for other lazy journalists in New Jersey. That's certainly not the case here on the Jersey First Television Network. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts? I'm going to have a lot to say about, quite frankly, the usual suspects in New Jersey. As you can see there, folks, I had to make sure that I updated the collage accordingly. You know, obviously, like anything else, it requires updating, just like our smartphones, our PCs, or our Macs. We have to download updates. Sometimes we also have to update sometimes the collages on this program. As you can see, they're obviously adding pendejos like Anthony Veneri, one of the most useless basura people that there are in New Jersey politics there, obviously, as well as MacGyver, the U.S. representative in the 8th Congressional, I'm sorry, not the 8th Congressional District, I'm sorry, I believe the 10th Congressional District, and of course her theatrics at Delaney Hall. Folks, let's be honest, always good for a laugh. It's always good to see her trying to cry victimhood, and hopefully her ass gets to see a jail cell this year, but we'll see. But it's good to add her and Anthony Veneri off to the rest of the clowns in New Jersey media, activism, academia, government officials, government workers, you name it, folks. There's always no shortage of people that give me material every week here on Jersey First TV, of course, on Real Talk. And of course, the latest example certainly is, of course, the ongoing sob stories we keep hearing about Renee Good, who obstructed federal agents in Minneapolis just a couple of weeks ago. Folks, again, as I said last week, I mean, the situation is tragic. It's unfortunate, but it's also avoidable, and also because of her own doing. Two things can be true at the same time. But it seems to be like that escapes some people here in New Jersey. And of course, the latest example of that is Gisele de la Cruz from the Latino Action Network. As you can see there, Miss Photogenic herself publishes a rather, suspect column for NJ.com. What else is new? And I'll sort of break that down and tell you why she's lying and why, quite frankly, she's not to be taken seriously on the matter. But folks, again, check out Final Thoughts. You want to stick around for that later on in the show. Folks, I can't say enough. Make sure you like, comment, and share tonight's episode. If you haven't subscribed already, please do so. It really helps the show grow and really helps get the show out to more people and really shows your support for fearless independent journalism brought to you by Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Folks, I like to talk to fellow journalists from time to time on this program, and more importantly, journalists that I respect, journalists that I know, quite frankly, are working every week. Now, folks, while I go by the sort of gimmick and the moniker of, the generational talent in Garden State media, folks, I got to tell you right now, pound for pound, as they say, I'm a big sports fan, arguably one of the best journalists going today in the New Jersey media establishment. And folks, he's a guy I have enormous respect for, a fellow Rutgers alumnus and the host of In the Middle with Fox Sports New Jersey. Folks, he's my good friend, Joey Bloch, joining us live right now on Real Talk. Joey, how are you?
I'm doing good, Fernando. I think you're hyping me up a little bit. I don't know if I'd call myself the media establishment, probably more alternative media, but I appreciate the compliment nonetheless. And thank you so much for having me tonight.
Bro, it's always a pleasure to have you on. And shout out to Mama Bloch. I got to tell you, I know she's a fan of the show. Always good to run into her. It seems like yesterday, I think I met her for the first time when we were at Rider University during the New Jersey Globe debates during the primary last February. I mean, oh my God, it's like literally a
I
year.
know. Where'd all the time go? It's almost a year. It feels like it was just yesterday.
Yeah, it feels like yesterday. We're driving down a rider. I mean, for me, it's a hike, but let me tell you, it feels like yesterday. We were covering a primary election in New Jersey, and sure enough, we're going to have another election, another primary here in 2026. But before we get to that, Joseph, tomorrow at 12 noon, thank the Lord, we will see the end of Phil Murphy's 2 terms here in New Jersey. And I think I speak on behalf of thousands, if not millions, of New Jersey residents. Or people around the country. I mean, good riddance to Phil Murphy. Nothing's more affordable. Nothing's more equitable. If you're an illegal immigrant, sure. If you're like, part of the alphabet mob, sure. But for homeowners, motorists, you name it, I don't know what, I just can't imagine someone saying with a straight face, we're better off 8 years later. But that seems to be the legacy it's summer painting for Phil Murphy. I know you've been covering his administration for some time since your participation in media. Listen, I'm someone who works in education. I'll give Phil Murphy an F. I don't think he's done well in anything, but again, that's how I think. How would you grade Phil Murphy after 8 years, Joseph?
Well, it really depends on what area you're looking at, for sure. I think the education side of it is definitely very polarizing, especially if you look at what he did with the sex ed curriculum, where there are a lot of parents out there who were not happy with the changes that were made, implementing it, talking more about gender identity at a younger age, where there are some people who feel that it should be in the home between the parent and the child, as well as cases where people feel like it should be actually at an older age, maybe 8th or 9th grade. So you have people there who are not too happy. So that is a polarizing. I mean, a lot of Governor Murphy's time in office is polarizing. But the one thing, strangely enough, that may not be is COVID. Yes, there are people who said he closed down the state too long, and yes, he threw people into nursing homes, and there are all these reports about maybe his administration didn't handle veterans homes as properly as he should have. But the reality is, it seems like a majority of New Jerseyans were happy with the outcome and the initialness of taking the threat seriously, as well as, you know, working with the Trump administrations to get ventilators to the state, as well as rolling out the vaccine. Now, obviously there could be some critique because at one point it was like the hardest state in the country to get a vaccine, but more or less on that part, I think that's where he would get a lot of praise, as well as with the film industry. He expanded the film tax credit, bring a lot of film innovation. You see the Netflix studio happening in Monmouth County, Paramount building in Bayonne. So you have those successes, but a lot of negativity in regards to the property tax thing. Some people say the anchor tax thing didn't go far enough, along with Stay NJ, where Craig Coughlin's saying, "Oh, this is this great program," but it didn't start till literally right now in January. And some people are skeptical about whether it's going to be sustainable over the years to come. So I think we're going to look at history and see how it plays out. And the interesting play is going to be with Mikey Sherrill, who has cast herself as more of a moderate, while Murphy's been this proud progressive. What's that going to mean? As well as what accomplishments of Murphy are going to stay and which ones are going to go? Are the more progressive policies going to stick around, or are we going to see Cheryl shake things up? Is she going to go further to the left? Probably not. But that's where I think it's going to be interesting to see for Murphy. And I think the grade for Murphy really depends on where you stand. I think your side of the aisle, more the Republicans, they're not going to be very happy. Democrats, believe it or not, they want a little more. But I think more or less, if you talk to any Democrat out there, they're going to give them a B or an A. But one point I'll say this, and then I'll hand it back to you, Fernando, is the fact that when we were at that debate, the Democratic debate, because you were there too back in February, all of the 6 candidates were literally asked, "Hey, what grade would you give Governor Murphy?" Interesting part, none of the candidates could give him an A. None of them. Which I think might say more or less what New Jerseyans are feeling here. That if you look at his approval ratings, they're in the mid-high 40s, and a blue state probably should be higher. So it's going to be remains to see for the governor what his legacy is going to be. and if he can expand the tent beyond Democrats to build into something more in the future.
Great breakdown there, Joey, for sure. Folks, if you're just joining us live right now, it is 5:55 on the East Coast. Again, 5 seconds is all it takes, folks. Like, comment, and share tonight's episode here as In the Middle host from Fox Sports New Jersey, Joey Bloch joins us live here on Real Talk. Again, folks, share the episode on all of your social media platforms. We appreciate that. Joey, I have to fight back a little bit. Again, and you break it down beautifully. I just look at it from the perspective of, and I'll sort of try to work all great points by you, but I'll sort of touch on the ones that really kind of hit home for me. I think he did an awful job with COVID. I think he catered way too much to the teachers unions, to the NJEA and AFT. Now, listen, to be fair, I mean, he had some accomplices. He had Steve Sweeney, who at the time of the Senate president. He also had Greg Coughlin as Assembly Speaker, who pretty much kind of like just kissed his rear end and let him do whatever he wanted during COVID. And listen, we started seeing schools shut down way, way too long, which again, we're starting to now see the damages to learning loss for our kids in our public schools because of keeping the states shut down longer than they should have been. Again, those are results that we'll see in the years ahead for sure. But I don't think history will look too kindly back on Phil Murphy for that. Certainly what he did with nursing homes, I think, was abominable, as well as what happened across the river with Andrew Cuomo, who was governor at the time. And I hate to politicize viruses, but again, it just seemed like red state governors got it right. And this is a state where, I didn't get vaccinated. I didn't care to, not because of some political notion. I just didn't care to. I remember getting a flu vaccine when I was 18 years old, Joey, and that sucked. And I hated it. And I remember what it felt like. I was like, yeah, I'll pass. And, Murphy was pretty punitive here in the state, whether it was about gatherings, whether it was about vaccine cards. If you wanted to go back to school or work, you had to prove, you had to provide proof of vaccination. I think he was a little punitive on that one. So again, that's why I'm a little harsh on him about it. When it comes to property tax relief, I mean, the anchor and the other programs, again, I mean, I'll just say it out loud. It's bullshit. It's like you're taking money out of your left pocket and saying, "Oh, here it is. I will put it in your right pocket." It wasn't really savings. And something that stood out for me, I remember during the League of Municipalities, I ran into the Assembly Speaker at one of the Latinos on the Rise open bars, and I saw him. And sure enough, when I said, "Oh, Mr. Speaker, hi," I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm Fernando, and he even let me finish my sentence. He's like, "I know you are, Fernando," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool, all right." And I was like, "All right, well, I'm glad you do, Mr. Speaker." And I'm like, "Mr. Speaker, listen, can we finally tackle property tax relief in 2026, please, coming up? I mean, for God's sakes." And he goes, "Oh, well, what town are you in?" I'm like, "I'm in Union City, Hudson County." "Oh, well, Mayor Stack, who's also my state senator, does a good job," which he does. But his first instinct was like, "Well, didn't you get an anchor check?" I'm like, Mr. Speaker, that's not enough. Like, give me an effing break. And I actually said that out loud, like, give me an effing break. And he just looked startled that someone didn't buy the bullshit of, "Oh, didn't you get an anchor check?" An anchor check is bullshit. What, like $400 for property taxes? Again, I don't know how they're down by you in Hillsborough. Now, again, my mayor does a great job here in the county.
I'll give you that.
But property taxes are about a little over 10,000. I mean, come on. It's so that's another thing I think that I don't think he worked hard enough with the Senate president, from Sweeney to Scutari, and then obviously keeping, Coughlin there. Another thing too, that let's be honest, it's still as shitty today as it was 8 years ago. And his quote was like, "Oh, I'm going to fix New Jersey Transit if it kills me." New Jersey Transit is still shitty. Take your pick. The gas tax went up again. Now, again, mind you, the gas tax went up under Governor Christie in that legislature. I get it. But at some point, the gas tax keeps going up to where, I'm not sure how it is down by you, but up by me, and I'm not talking about the shitty gas like Delta or whatever, that's water. I'm talking about real good gas like Sunoco or Shell. I mean, it's down to $2.75. And because of the gas tax going up again, we really should be paying $2 for gas. And at no point in time did anyone ever think about, well, maybe we should revisit the gas tax, because isn't it supposed to go into the Transportation Trust Fund, right, to fix the roads, Joey? Well, guess what? AAA continues to have New Jersey in the bottom third of road quality in the country. I mean, again, I think about 8 years later, and you're right, it depends who you ask. The vote blue no matter who crowd thinks it's the reincarnation of Jesus. But I think regular, everyday New Jerseyans that pay property taxes, that work, I just don't think that they're going to look kindly on Phil Murphy. And if he thinks that these 8 years are like some legacy that he could say, well, maybe I should run in the primary in 2028, he's out of his mind.
It will be interesting to see what happens with his future there. I mean, you have to look at also the way he handled the minimum wage. That is one thing you're going to expect to see him tout, how he got the $15 minimum wage that's going up. Then you also do have the toll prices that keep going up too, where it seems like New Jersey wants some relief on that front. Not going to happen there. An interesting thing I'm curious to see what happens to the future of it is the plastic bag ban, because you've gone to the grocery store plenty of times, Fernando, and I've heard this from a lot of people who may not necessarily be political people. They're like, why can't I have my plastic bag? Can you get me a paper bag? And some people are not too thrilled about that, especially when you go to the produce section and can get a plastic bag. So it'll be interesting to see what the future of that is. But in terms of Governor Murphy's legacy and how it goes to the primary, expect him to tout the minimum wage, the paid sick leave, how he expanded that, and as well as legalizing marijuana in the state, recreational marijuana, to clarify, because medical started under Christie. These are going to be issues that he touts, but you're going to expect toll prices, taxes, NJ Transit fees going up, the running of NJ Transit. Those could potentially be damaging issues for Murphy if he goes into 2028 running for president and none of that really plays out. Now, if Cheryl is somehow able to reverse some of that, maybe there'll be some cover, but I think it's going to be a wide Democratic field. I expect a number of them are going to point out some potential vulnerabilities if he, in fact, does run for president.
Well, I think it's fair to say, and maybe it's still years off, but I think it's fair to say that somewhere in his grave, Woodrow Wilson, I think, will remain the only New Jersey governor to ever become, the president of the United States or any New Jerseyan in general. I think
you never know.
Listen, I think we'll be safe. We'll be safe from Cory Booker, thank the Lord, hopefully. And also, I think Phil Murphy. We'll see. I mean, obviously,
Cheryl. I mean, some people are speculating about that already, Fernando, even though she's only hours away from taking office.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, it seems like everyone wants to put her as a VP nominee somewhere. I mean, Jesus. I mean, can we change like the nameplate on the office first and see what happens before that? But yeah, listen, 2025 was an interesting year. Certainly the most contentious primaries we ever saw, at least in my adult life, for both the Republican and the Democrat parties. Obviously, we saw a very surprising election. Back in November, I think a lot of pundits and insiders had this race within a couple of points. That was not to be. So I think the government shutdown hurt the Republican Jack Ciattarelli. I mean, Jack wasn't a great candidate altogether, but you thought that the wind was at his back, obviously, with affordability being an issue here in New Jersey, taxes, everything else. But listen, the government shut down, the optics about SNAP and everything else. And listen, it was just, being anti-Trump was enough to just rally the base. And the vote blue, no matter who crowd, came out of big numbers. And they got Cheryl across the finish line. Certainly, she takes office tomorrow at 12:01 p.m. And we'll see. I mean, listen, it'll just be a few weeks. She has to submit a budget to the legislature for the next fiscal year. And I think from what you're hearing from insiders that talk to me, I'm sure as you as well, there might be some tough decisions here. Obviously, I think, we've been reading about some government employees maybe having to take early retirement, things of that nature, where some tough decisions have to be made here. I mean, listen, there's no federal surplus money coming from COVID. During the primary and during the general election, we heard, hey, I'm not raising the sales tax, but now everything's on the table. New Jersey has to find revenue somehow. So, hey, as I tell people, especially the low information voters that we seem to be surrounded by, you get what you vote for. So we'll see now when she takes office tomorrow. But having said that, though, Joey, let's turn our attention now to this year. Certainly, the new governor takes office tomorrow. We saw the new members of the state assembly take office last week. A new legislature, obviously, will be presiding over the next budget. But sure enough, we have a special primary election coming up in what was Mikey Sherrill's old seat, the 11th congressional district. And as a WWE fan, it almost looks like the Royal Rumble with the amount of candidates that are vying on the Democrat side for that seat. Obviously, it seems like the only Republican right now that's going to be established and declared is Joe Hathaway. I know you interviewed him a couple of weeks ago. Great interview by you. What else is new by
Thank
you? Obviously, what else is
You're
new with
too kind.
Joseph with your stuff? But he'll be on the show in a few weeks. I'm looking forward to talking to him. But it seems like there's a lot of Democrats in CD11, whether it seems like Phil Murphy's handpicked Brendan Gill. No surprise that Brendan Gill's been in the trenches with Phil Murphy for years as an advocate for him. We have former Representative Tom Malinowski out of CD7 in there. We have really a full-blown socialist like Analilia Mejia in CD11 as well. We have others. We'll get to Coleman in a bit stepping down, but how do you see CD11 with the Democrats right now, Joey?
Well, it's a very interesting race for sure. I do have to go back to one point you said about the Republicans and why Jack Ciattarelli lost. I'm going to give probably an unheard of take here that a lot of Republicans don't want to talk about. I'm not really sure why, but I really think the failure for the Ciattarelli campaign was turnout. That's why he lost. Because if you look at the numbers, there were 1.9 million people in the state of New Jersey who voted for Donald Trump in 2024. Now, out of the Republicans who were registered at the time, it was 1.6 million people. So try to keep all these numbers in mind.
Sure.
And the amount of people who voted for Jack Ciattarelli in 2025 was 1.4 million. So that means essentially, on top of Republicans, there were at least 300,000 people who were registered independents, if not Democrats or something else, who voted for Donald Trump in 2024. Now, why is this all important? Because Mikey Sherrill, yeah, she didn't get all the Harris vote. She did get 1.8 million. So if he was able to turn out the Trump vote, he could have narrowly won that. Now, why did he not do that? Low propensity voters. As Fernando pointed out, low propensity voters, they weren't paying attention. And quite frankly, I don't think they were engaged properly. For some people who, they vote in the presidential races, but don't necessarily vote in the off year. Well, Sherrill's campaign made sure to get those voters out. And on the anti-Trump vote, that I think really didn't play as much of a factor as people think. Yes, it motivated Democrats, but if you look at the exit polling time and time again, a plurality of people in the state of New Jersey did not take Donald Trump into their consideration when picking their gubernatorial candidate. Now, how does this play into CD11? Well, a lot of Democrats lining up think they got their shot. For Hathaway, it's a bit of an underdog race. I'm not going to lie. It's not the CD11 of 2018. If he wants to turn that around, he's got to get low propensity voters out there. He's got to reach across the aisle, which people say with Ciattarelli, maybe didn't do enough because, yeah, he did well with Republicans, but he didn't get the independents and the Democrats out there. And for the Democrats in this race, very fascinating. You got Malinowski, who moved into the district only last year when there was a campaign essentially on the horizon. You have Brendan Gill, who's endorsed by Phil Murphy. Malinowski's endorsed by Andy Kim, by the way. And then on top of that, you got the sitting lieutenant governor, Murphy's right-hand woman, running against his hand-picked candidate. And then you have proud progressive Analilia Mejia, who is endorsed by Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Ro Khanna. Just to get all the flavors out there. So this is a jam-packed race. That's essentially the top of the field. You have John Bartlett in there, who's the Passaic County Commissioner. He was endorsed. It was a double endorsement between Tahisha Way and John Bartlett in the Passaic County line. Mm-hmm. Not that there really is a line existing anymore, but the county party endorsed them. So he's kind of in the mix. But everybody else is kind of fighting to try and get their place here. There's literally 11 people vying for all of them. And it's really fascinating to see how this is going to play out, especially later in the game. Now we're seeing some outside money coming in for Tahisha Way. And now AIPAC is attacking Tom Malinowski, accusing him of not being pro-Israel enough, which Malinowski is finding bizarre. He's like, I am pro-Israel. I'm just critical of Netanyahu. So we're going to watch and see how this final week plays out. And is it going to be about money and who's putting the most TV ads on the air? Or is it going to be about who's been doing the groundwork and who's been laying it for the longest time? That's what I'm watching for, Fernando. I want to see what happens there.
Yeah, great breakdown as always. Folks, again, if you're just joining us live right now, it is 6:10 here on the East Coast. And my guest tonight is the host of In the Middle with Fox Sports New Jersey. Folks, if you don't check out the show, what are you waiting for? Make sure you bookmark that and check out Joey Bloch's great programming that he brings you every single week with In the Middle on Fox Sports New Jersey. Folks, again, like, comment, and share tonight's episode here. It takes a few seconds and it really shows your support and helps the show grow here via Jersey First TV. Now, what's interesting, Joey, is obviously, talking to people about this special election. Now, I think the timing's kind of unique because obviously the primary, I believe, is in February. And
on a Thursday, too, to make it even more bizarre.
Randomly, right? Yeah. And I believe the special election essentially would be in April. Now, what I suspect, and again, we'll see what happens with the turnout during the primary, but you could very well have a scenario where, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's Brendan Gill who wins the primary by a very narrow margin. You could almost have a little bit of an infight in the Democrat Party where it's like, wait a second, you barely won the primary during the special, and maybe he deserves a primary challenger going into June. So for the first 6 months of New Jersey in 2026, you literally could have, an abundance of ads and fundraising because, again, now listen, if whether it's Brendan Gill or Tom Malinowski, whoever wins, let's say it's a decisive margin, you may not have some pushback where someone might say, well, he barely won. That doesn't really represent the electorate. I think he still should have a challenger for the primary in June. That could be the case. But if someone runs away with it like 10 points or more, which I don't know. I mean, again, it all depends on turnout. It's February. We'll see. I think it's not sure if it's before or after Super Bowl week. Maybe people aren't in that mindset, whatever. Maybe it's Valentine's Day weekend. I don't know, whatever. But the point is that you could very well see a scenario where whoever wins the primary going into the special could still have a primary challenger going into June.
You are right. This is going to be a food fight for sure for the Democratic Party. There's all these factions in there. I mean, yes, most of them are touting the progressive line, which is way different than what Mikey Sherrill did when she ran back in 2018, because again, this is a way different district, especially with redistricting that happened in the lead up to 2022. So this isn't necessarily the same kind of race, but the reality is now you have this war that we've seen in the Democratic Party for the last year or so now, moderates versus progressives, but also you're having progressive establishment versus the insurgency. Now, what do I mean? You got Malinowski, who's a moderate. He's really the only one you could argue is moderate, although it really depends. When I interviewed the lieutenant governor, I tried to kind of get her to identify where she stands. She wouldn't really take a position, which is kind of interesting considering there is this civil war in the Democratic Party right now about moderates versus progressivism and where it goes from here. And she didn't really want to answer that question. I tried to get her now, well, do you consider yourself more of a moderate or progressive? And she kind of just said, well, I'm a fighter for New Jersey. And that's kind of where it's interesting, where she talks about Trump. And so you have Malinowski, who's kind of playing the moderate role here. And you have Brendan Gill and John Barlin, a lot of these other people who are more the progressive establishment. And then you got Ana Lilia Mejia. She is the grassroots candidate in this race. Now you got some other ones, but she's the most successful. She's got the money behind her. She's got Bernie Sanders literally rallying for her right now up in Wayne, trying to get that vote galvanized. So it's almost like you got to find your wing of the party and who's going to come out. With special elections, they do tend to be the people who are most energized, with right now appear to be the progressives who hate Trump, hate ICE, want to abolish ICE, want to extend the healthcare subsidies, want universal healthcare, which, by the way, most of the people in this race, Fernando, have expressed openness to single payer healthcare. Even Tom Malinowski wants a private option, but said maybe down the road he'd want a single payer system. So we will see whether the moderates win on this one, whether the establishment wins, or whether it's going to be the grassroots. But chances are there could be a side that's not happy at the end of this, and it could be messy, it could be close. And if that's the case, Fernando, you're absolutely right. We could have a primary in June.
No, certainly. And listen, it seems like the only Republican that's really serious in there is Joe Hathaway. And again, I'm looking forward to talking to him. I know I caught your interview with him. Really, really great stuff as always. Listen, I think he's playing it smart. I think he's going to be there raising money. I think he's trying to run as a moderate Republican, which is what he is. I think we learned last November that someone who I guess maybe is super conservative, maybe can't win in New Jersey. And listen, I think I said this to you last year that I don't want to sound apocalyptic here or have a doomsday scenario, but based on what we saw last November, I don't know if I'll ever see a Republican governor in my adult lifetime again. It just seems like the the low information voter turnout was incredible. It was just like, hey, as long as you're anti-Trump, that's all I care about. And meanwhile, again, whether it's the Democrats running in CD11, listen, again, and I say this all the time, you can say you're anti-Trump, but at the end of the day, again, and here's a perfect example of how politically tone deaf Democrats are in New Jersey, where aspects of the big beautiful bill take effect this month, especially when it comes to no taxes on tips and overtime. Well, guess what? Guess who that really affects in New Jersey? A lot of people work in nightlife, same thing across the river in New York. And guess what? Blue states are refusing to adopt those provisions of the tax bill on a federal level. So when I hear someone like Ana Lilia Mejia, the Democrats say, well, I'm pushing for affordability. I'm pushing. Well, that's bullshit. Because if you were, the first thing you would say is, hey, no taxes on tips and overtime is what's in this bill. We don't want to adopt that in New Jersey. So screw working class people. But somehow, again, it's like the low information voters, just you give them a little nibble and they just eat it up like seals eating fish at a circus. And quite frankly, Joey, it's infuriating because, at the end of the day, here in New Jersey, the reason your property taxes are the highest in the country and you're paying more to go on the turnpike and the parkway, the reason you're paying more at the gas pump with the gas tax increase has nothing to do with Republicans and Donald Trump. It has to do with Democrats in New Jersey that continue to price New Jerseyans out. So it'd be interesting if one of them was at least intellectually honest in CD11 and would say, yeah, listen, I think there are measures of this bill we should adopt, especially no taxes on tips and overtime. But I think that's too much critical thinking for Democrats in CD11, Joey.
Well, for sure, there's definitely a messaging war being waged here, and the Republicans, let's be honest, are losing that. And that seems to be the issue for the Republicans, that I'm going to be honest here, it's really, they want to hang their hat on, it's always the blame game of, oh, well, anti-Trump year, nothing we can do, where I pretty much laid out the strategy for you here. You got to turn out your voters, and if the GOP wants to be successful on a state level, which I actually think they could be, and they could potentially flip the governor's mansion in 2029 if they message correctly, if they turn out their voters, if they invest more in vote by mail and early voting, and they engage, they cross the aisle, and they go into communities where they're receptive to the message. That's why Donald Trump was as successful as he was here in New Jersey in 2024, was they went into Hispanic communities. They talked about communism and the threat of socialism and Democratic Party policies going way too far and too much government overreach. That's something that is also affordability and really pinning it to the Democrats. While right now, the Democrats get to play Trump, 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 and the Republicans there's nothing we can do about that. Where if you have the right candidate who's got charisma, kind of a star power Chris Christie figure, doesn't necessarily have to be as bombastic, but someone of that level who can message properly, stick to message, get attention, turn out voters, go into places like Passaic County where you have a large Hispanic population, you have a large Jewish population, which, by the way, I believe is the key that you're going to see Republicans over the next several years. Watch the Orthodox Jewish population. Watch Lakewood. Lakewood is one of the largest and fastest growing communities in New Jersey, and it is pretty heavily Republican. And they were also the second largest early vote count in the entire state. Jersey City was first, which gave Cheryl the advantage, obviously. Those are places they have to sit there and focus. They have to know how to get their voters and reach out to people who may necessarily not have voted from the past, like African Americans. Go into those places and kind of chip up the vote in places like Newark. That's how Republicans win. If they talk about school choice, if they talk about affordability, low taxes, less government intervention, pro-family policies, then I think you're going to see stuff. Yes, the Democrats have the voter registration advantage. Yes, they are very good at the messaging aspect of it. And yes, there is an anti-Trump sentiment, which Republicans are not doing too great right now. And on healthcare, the Democrats seem to be winning that game right now. So, Fernando, I think there's a lot of play here, and we're going to have to see how that works and who wins. Or is Joe Hathaway? He seems like a guy who's trying to learn that lesson right now, but obviously, voter registration problem in his district. Is he able to overcome that and generate enthusiasm for his campaign? Or are one of the 11 Democrats running on the other side of him just going to win? That's what I want to see here. Are the Democrats going to pick? And again, if they pick someone maybe like an Ana Lily Mejia who might energize Republicans, maybe they'll win there too. That's what I want to see here. Who is more energized, Republicans or Democrats? Can Republicans message properly, or the Democrats going to talk about healthcare, anti-ICE stuff, and are they going to win the day? That's what I'm watching for, Fernando.
Oh, great points, Joey, as always. And speaking about messaging for Republicans, obviously that falls now on the shoulders of the new chair, Christine Hanlon, the former Monmouth County clerk. After a pretty contentious little season between the holidays leading up to the reorg meeting, obviously she was elected chair by the state committee people. Shout out to the new vice chair, my good friend Pavel Solokov out of Hoboken here nearby me in Hudson County. But listen, no rest for the weary. I mean, Christine's going to have a lot of work to do. Obviously, trying to run some candidates in these congressional districts. We have a new Republican that surfaced in CD9. We'll get to her in a moment. Obviously, whether or not the NJGOP or the GOP on a national level will support someone like Joe Hathaway, who let's see if he's the nominee. But again, we have a U.S. Senate race this year where, I mean, Cory Booker, he's affectionately known as Spartacus to everybody, obviously, to so many of us, will be running for re-election this year. It's tragic. I mean, again, I cringe whenever he's on the floor of the U.S. Senate because of his theatrics, and it's just the stupidity he espouses.
All 25 hours of it.
Yeah, I mean, oh, cool. You didn't eat anything. You wore a diaper. Oh, joy. I mean, wow. That's my God. I mean, listen, you want to talk about, erecting a monument in the middle of the town square for this clown, but nevertheless, though, he has a $20 million war chest. And, for someone like the new NJGOP chair, Christine Hanlon, I mean, she's got a lot of work to do, trying to put up a okay, we'll get to Joey in a minute there. A little technical difficulties there, folks, in just a moment. Okay.
I'm back.
Welcome back, Joey. And obviously, we have that race. We have congressional races all throughout New Jersey where the NJGOP chair is going to have to get to work. Listen, very disappointing 2025. I think that there's this level of infighting within Republican circles about, well, do we get back to maybe a moderate candidate could win in New Jersey, or do we have a far-right conservative candidate? We saw that didn't win in 2025. What are you hearing, Joey, about really the long road ahead for someone like the new NJGOP chair, Christine Hanlon?
Well, listen, she's got a tough road ahead, considering that obviously massive landslide loss for the Chitterelli campaign, and you have a lot of people angry for a variety of reasons, whether they're blaming the staff, whether they're blaming the candidate himself, whether they're blaming the NJGOP, Glenn Paulson, and that whole gang. There is a lot of rebuilding that the Republican Party is going to have to do to beat the Democratic Party in New Jersey. And it's quite evident even in the Senate race, where you want to know how many declared Republicans there are to go up against Cory Booker in just a matter of months? I just take a wild guess. You know what it is? One candidate.
Oh, God.
Justice Michael Murphy. One candidate, Fernando, where at this point, where 6 years ago against Cory Booker, there are already a number of candidates lined up. Now, the establishment wasn't too thrilled with those candidates, but they ultimately said, all right, we get behind someone. Right now, it doesn't seem like they're thrilled. You hear names like Alina Habba being thrown out there, Mike Testa being thrown out there. Now they can convince someone like that to run. Maybe they can run a plausible race.
Joey, again, and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you finish. But I mean, that just seems like hard. It almost seems like a suicide kamikaze type of mission there, because not just a $20 million war chest that he has to work with, but again, low information voters which we're surrounded by here in New Jersey, look at someone like Cory Booker, and for whatever reason, I mean, again, if you're intellectually honest folks at home, you should be embarrassed that Cory Booker represents us in the U.S. Senate. There is not one piece of meaningful legislation this guy's ever introduced, other than theatrics and screaming and trying to fool us with that bullshit marriage, whatever that he got when he married. It just seems to me like Republicans have so much work to do, and of course, you just don't want to surrender the race to him, and you want to put up a viable candidate against Cory Booker. But let's be honest, folks. And again, New Jersey has not elected a Republican to the U.S. Senate since really long before you and I were ever born. We're going back to 1972 during the re-election campaign of Richard Nixon. Folks, that's how far back we're going here. And it just seems like, I don't know if anybody really wants that suicide mission to take on Cory Booker again when it comes to fundraising and the disarray the Republicans are in, man.
Yeah, I know. It seems like the reality is Cory Booker is seen as the strong candidate. And no matter what you do, it's going to be a double-digit loss for the Republicans. Now, if you ran the right candidate, you could get competitive and build upon that. But again, Republicans right now, they're disaffected. It's kind of like where the Democrats were a year ago, where they're like, oh my God, Trump won big. He almost won New Jersey. What are we going to do? That's what it's the question is not how you were knocked down, it's how you get back up. And that's what Republicans have to answer, especially for the chairwoman. Is she able to get money in? Is she able to build on those things like I talked about? Is it about recruiting different type of candidates? People who, like you said, maybe they're moderates. Maybe they're not your typical politician. Maybe they're someone who you wouldn't expect. Maybe it's someone who's respected by both sides of the aisle who can win. Maybe they got to change the game. Maybe it's got to be, they got to focus on 80-20 issues, not necessarily focus on the big partisan stuff, but at the same time, still be able to get those Trump supporters out. Because like I said, if they got them all out in 2025, they would have narrowly won the election. So it's this balancing act that has to be played. And I think the thing for 2029, which I know we're jumping a little ahead here, but it's important. The thing for Cheryl that's going to make or break her is energy costs. Are the utility costs going to go up? In that case, probably in trouble. If she's going to freeze them, like she said on the campaign trail and kind of has been saying ever since, could go either way. If she somehow drops them, that's going to be hard for Republicans. That's the issue. The taxes, everything else. I know you and I love to talk about these issues and you hear people complain about them, but the reality is, high taxes or not, Democrats have still won in this state, regardless of what's happening.
It's mind-boggling to me. It is just absolutely mind-boggling where, again, we know the gas tax started under Christie. I get it. And under Sweeney and at the time, Vinnie Prieto, the Assembly Speaker, who, by the way, my condolences to his family on the passing of his wife, former Assembly Speaker Vincent Prieto. But then it transitioned into Scutari and Coughlin. It seems like there's nothing affordable about New Jersey. It boggles my mind. I have to look at the numbers about outward migration out of New Jersey. I know so many people that just said, I can't afford to live here. I'm moving down to the Carolinas. I'm moving down to Virginia, maybe Georgia or Florida. Who knows? But the bottom line is it's astounding to me where the messaging has just been so effective where, and again, it's the only explanation I can come up with is just, it's the gullibility of low information voters, because at the end of the day, Republicans in Washington have nothing to do with what goes on in Trenton in terms of property taxes, the gas tax, the budget. I mean, just again, coddling illegal immigrants in New Jersey the way we do with, again, and shout out to Assemblyman Paul Canitra down the shore, I believe in Monmouth County, who articulates it like we spend over $7 billion a year so far to coddle illegal immigrants in this state, whether it's providing healthcare, whether it's providing other subsidies and amenities. And people are just like, well, but Trump sucks. And I'm just like, God, it's again, I want to be the academic in me. I want to be cordial, but something I'm just like, how effing stupid are you that just it's all about Trump in your deranged mind. And it just drives me crazy. And to your point about Cheryl, yes, during the campaign trail, okay, well, I'm going to freeze energy costs. Forget about freezing, reduce them for God's sakes. I mean, it's just like, listen, it's only early January and it's been a cold winter, Joey. It's been a cold winter. So, heat costs, everything else is going to keep going up. I mean, for the most part, food has gone down. Okay. Now, listen, if you're like morbidly obese and you can't, budget yourself, I mean, that's your problem. But I mean, food costs have gone down. Energy prices have gone down for the most part, not with the gas tax, but it just seems like whether it's in CD11, the congressional races, or even which awaits, Governor Sherrill in just less than 24 hours, I just think it's going to be, you're right. I think messaging is going to matter.
Definitely, for sure. It really comes all down to messaging. If you can't get the messaging right, then what do you have? That's what political campaigning is all about. And the Democrats have done very good on this point, whether you agree with the message or not, or whether you agree with the policy outcomes or not, but they have messaged it that, Mikey Sherrill offered a solution, which even the departing governor, Phil Murphy, has been skeptical of: freeze the energy prices via executive order, which, that could fail in court potentially, depending on how the courts in New Jersey see that and whether people challenge it, which you will expect some challenges there. And it's simple messaging: freeze the energy costs, bring down taxes, sales tax. And that was one thing where I think Jack Chiarelli got dinged on, was that the Sherrill campaign masterfully, twisted his words a little bit, that he was going to be for a 10% sales tax, despite him saying at the first general election debate, I'm not for a sales tax. Sherrill was asked about it, couldn't really answer it. Then later on said that she wasn't. And now, like you said, now it's back on the table. But again, it's setting the messaging, defining your opponent early. Sherrill did that. Well, Chiarelli, it seemed like they were kind of fumbling a bit between the messaging. Oh, we cut up this podcast where it sounds like you're going to have to pay an arm and a leg for energy, and you got to sacrifice it for green energy and all that. And it just didn't seem like they were able to define her out of the brand that she put out as mom, military, former Navy helicopter pilot. I think we all saw the ads of her.
Mike, I get it. You can fly a helicopter. Good for you. I mean, that doesn't reduce my property taxes, but that's cute. I mean, I get it,
Right. Everyone remembers that, where Chiarelli, you don't really remember many of those commercials. You don't really, you remember the one seeing him at the diner, but other than that, his identity, yeah, okay, you knew he was a former assemblyman. Maybe some people knew he was a father for, but she had that thing. And that's what Republicans need to find: the guy or the gal with the thing. And that's what they got to think about when they're building these candidates, when they're recruiting these candidates. And that's what I'm curious to see, if the Republicans are able to do that in these congressional races, which now we're seeing in some of these swing districts. Are they able to get candidates who resonate with people, and maybe even play in some districts that they wouldn't, like Joe Hathaway, for example? Or are they not going to? And that's what we're going to see. And with the Senate too, will they find someone? We're going to have to see how the Republicans approach this.
And speaking about messaging, obviously in the 9th Congressional District, Tiffany Burris, the wife of former New York Giant Plaxico Burris, has entered the race there as a Republican. Sure enough, first ad this weekend, coincidentally during the NFL playoffs, during the divisional round of the NFL playoffs, we saw a lot of ads from Tiffany Burris talking about affordability, talking about the fact that Nellie Poe, who, by the way, in 2024 narrowly won re-election over then candidate Billy Prempeh, former serviceman and obviously a 3-time candidate in that district. I mean, it kind of makes you wonder, if the Indian GOP or the national GOP just pumped in maybe $1 million into that race, Billy Prempeh could have won. He only lost, I think, by 1.5 points. And I think that Tiffany Burris is seizing on the fact that Nellie Poe is nothing more than a rubber stamp to far-left Democrats in Washington, obviously voting against the big, beautiful bill and other aspects. We'll see, with someone like her, though. But what are you hearing about Tiffany Burris, who certainly I think is going to get some money when it comes to fundraising? Obviously, her husband, I'm sure, is going to be able to convince a lot of his former teammates and former NFL players whose wives look at Tiffany and say, wow, look at Tiffany Burris. jumping into this House race in New Jersey, I might want to, I might want to write a check to Tiffany Burris, and I'm sure Plaxico will do that with former teammates, former NFL players. Do you see Tiffany Burris getting any momentum this early right now?
I do at this point because the GOP establishment seems to be in love with Tiffany. I mean, if you look at it, it seemed like hours after she got in, the county chairs from Bergen and Passaic and all the counties in this district, they got behind her uniformly joint statement. It almost seemed like a planned operation, if you asked me. And
But Joe, let me ask, and I'll let you finish. I'm sorry, but what was tragic to me, and because he's a friend of mine, I've interviewed him multiple times, as I know you have too. It seemed like Billy Prempe was building up a pretty good coalition for some years now, where at the time, obviously, he was challenging former Representative Bill Pascrell. And yes, the first time he ran against him in 2020, pretty decisive loss, but he was chipping away so much so that obviously, with the passing in 24 of Pascrell, and obviously we saw Nelly Post, step into that seat. He looked like he was making considerable headway there. And mysteriously, he announced he was not running again. If you read his statement online on social media, it seemed like he was a little disenchanted with the establishment Republican Party here in New Jersey, which, again, I can't blame him. I thought, for some time, the establishment Republican Party has been incompetent. But it almost seemed like that's what he was intimating that he was not happy with the establishment, that they weren't going to back him again, and he was going to have to sort of work extra hard and see where this race took. It seemed like Republicans just immediately catered to Tiffany Burris. And again, listen, I think it's great to have some diversity in the candidate field, but it seems like, to your point, it seems like they're plowing the road to kind of make Tiffany Burris the nominee here in the 9th Congressional District for Republicans.
Yeah, that's where I was basically going to go with this, because I've been hearing this for months now. You've been hearing the rumbles that the GOP establishment wasn't really thrilled with the selection of candidates. You have Billy Prempe in the mix, who some people thought should have been given another shot. This would be his 4th time running. He got the nomination 3 times at this point, and on the 3rd try 2 years ago, he only narrowly lost by about 5 points. It was single digits against Poe unexpectedly. And some people said, you know what, he had a case to make. But a lot of people in the GOP establishment did not feel that way. You saw some fundraising numbers that weren't as promising, whether that was the GOP establishment not wanting to give money to Prempe, or whether it was a lack of ability to get people to buy into his campaign. He was more of the grassroots kind of guy. This was not the establishment choice. If you even go back to 2020, they ran a guy against him, and it seemed like the establishment was running to try and get behind that guy, and ultimately Prempe was able to beat him. But this time felt a little different. There was a lot more national money at play, and this was a swing district, and a lot of people felt like, you know what, Prempe just wasn't up to the task. And then there were also some questionable allegations about his background, some accusations about QAnon and all this type of stuff, which led the Republicans to ultimately try to go for another one. You had Pino in the mix, the councilwoman from Clifton, who some people thought, okay, this is going to be alternative, but then it became obvious that she had ties to Nellie Poe and was pro-Palestine, which obviously is not going to go over with the Republican electorate. And that left a lot of people scratching their head of, are we going to put money in this race at all? Because it looked like up till now, the Republicans were just going to let this one go. It's going to be another story of, well, the NJGOP just abandoned that one. And now with Burris in the mix, it's a different story. And you saw the NRCC even put out a statement, stop short of endorsing her, but basically said all this great stuff that she's done. But I think there's still questions about her. And yes, the husband is definitely a boost, but he also has some questions in his background himself that could potentially drag her down. But she definitely has a biography that it's going to be an interesting race.
Yeah, listen, as a Cowboy fan, you always got to worry about Plaxico Burris and a firearm nearby, So, got to make sure he's not transporting firearms across state lines. I'll leave it at that. But a very interesting race, though, I think, coming up in the 9th. Moving a little south, obviously, and I don't mind saying this out loud. Thank God Bonnie Watson Coleman is retiring. one of the more useless members of the House for some years now. Again, someone who's just into theatrics. We've seen it. Obviously, we saw that with LaMonica MacGyver with her theatrics at the ICE detention center in Delaney Hall in Newark. We saw Coleman there, obviously last year, participating in those theatrics. She's stepping down, and sure enough, as soon as she stepped down, a lot of Democrats are starting to, rally around that primary season. What are you hearing about the 12th congressional district, and do Republicans even have a chance there?
Well, that remains to be seen about Republicans. Right now, this is historically Democratic. It's been made even bluer in the last round of redistricting. And before that, it basically has been blue ever since the Rush Holt days, which we're really going back in. Darius Mayfield ran this district twice over the last several years, and he was able to make some headway, keeping it, I'd say, within 10, 15 points, which was pretty good because this Democratic district is like plus 30 Democrat. But the reality is it's going to be hard. You have Greg Mealy, who's tried a lot. He seems to be putting a lot of effort into this race, and maybe he'll be able to build on Darius Mayfield's momentum and possibly turn out a more competitive race than people are expecting. But as we've mentioned, the environment definitely is harder for Republicans, and it will require the NJGOP giving him some resources there. And as we know, we're going to have to see what the chairwoman decides to do with the resources to play out there. But in terms of the Democrats, this is going to be a nail biter and really could depend on who the nominee is, or whether this really is going to change. But it seems like all of them want to be in the mold of Bonnie Watson Coleman. She definitely has had a lot of influence on this race, but there is this kind of question about, is it going to be more, are we going to go back to the white male type of thing? Is it going to be a woman of color? These are questions that are in the primary process right now, because you have Brad Cohen, who is a Jewish man. He's the mayor of East Brunswick, who seems to be more on the pro-Israel side from what I can gather. And in a district and an electorate in the Democratic Party in this district that's not really pro-Israel, someone like that would normally have a hard time. But is AIPAC willing to jump in and give him a boost? That remains to be seen. Is it going to be a Chanel Robinson, who is an African-American woman who's, she's represented Somerset County on the board of county commissioners now for close to a decade? Is she going to be the nominee to kind of carry the torch? You have the mayor of Plainfield also in this mix. I think it's up to 12 Democrats in this race. And also, we're going to see what comes out of it too, because one of the big players was supposed to be State Senator Andrew Zwicker, who's kind of was able to flip the legislative district 16 on the state side blue a number of times over the last decade, and he decided no. So now it kind of leaves this open hole. There doesn't seem to be a front runner here. While with the 11th district, there kind of are. Here, it's really just a mishmash of, we're trying to figure out what's going on. And again, more the intra-party war. Is the progressives going to win? Is it going to be the pro-Palestine side going to win? Is it going to be pro-Israel? Are we going to see a reverse? That's what I want to see here, is what dynamics play out and whether AIPAC gets involved in this ways the way that it's getting involved in NJ11 right now.
Interesting races for sure. Let's switch gears here, Joey, to journalism today. And obviously, here in New Jersey, I think that you and I are pretty good examples of journalists doing it our own specific way. Obviously, our podcasts continue to get great traffic. You do great work every week. I make it a point always to put it on my calendar. I'm like, when Joey publishes something, I make it a point over the weekend, whether I'm doing laundry, whether I'm walking to jujitsu, I always have you on, and I always listen to what you're doing. And really, I think it's been over 5 years already now. You've been on the air. You've been doing great work. Take us through, let's say, the early growing pains and to where you are today. What's improved? What needs improvement with Joey Bloch in the middle?
Well, that's a very good way of summing it up here. It has been over 5 years now. I started this back when I was on college radio in September of 2020, and boy, has it been a ride. I mean, I would have never imagined even being on this very show right now. I was just a kid in the middle of COVID doing it out of my basement. I already graduated Rutgers, and it was kind of based on the generosity of the lovely people at WRC Rutgers Radio, allowing me to do a show from home on a weekly basis. So I was interviewing all types of people. I got Chris Christie on the line. I had Christy Todd Whitman. I had Bob Menendez. I couldn't believe it, but we've really come a far way. Even started doing some stuff over the past year of going out to events, like where I was with you, Fernando, at all the gubernatorial debates, covering those, getting one-on-one, well, as much as you can, basically getting to ask a question and hoping they answer it with the candidates, which is something I don't think I would have imagined at this point. Getting to talk to Jack Ciattarelli face-to-face, Mikey Sherrill face-to-face, all these type of people. And I think we're going to try and do a little more of that and see where things go here. And we've expanded the tent. Originally, more Central Jersey focused. Now doing a little North Jersey, a little South Jersey, and really just laying a platform for people who want to get their voice out and that New Jerseyans need to hear from, which is kind of nice because in the beginning, not going to lie, it kind of was cold call and be like, hey, I know you know nothing about me, but can you come on my show? And they'd be like, who are you? And now there's kind of people where like, oh, I know you, or oh yeah, I remember so and so told me about you. I talked to them. They said you had this good interview or whatever, which is always very flattering to say because I always just try to do the best I can. I wouldn't say I'm like this star power here that people say I am, but anyways, I see myself trying to do more of that and kind of push the boundaries and do more types of coverage maybe in the field and seeing where I can go from there and just trying to expand the tent overall and talk to people. And this year it's midterms, baby. We're going to be doing all these congressional races, buttoning up NJ11, talking about NJ12, NJ7. We got that coming up too. So we're going to be talking to a lot of those candidates and just trying to get a handle on all this crazy politics that we see every day because it's nuts. There's always a new thing every day. You can barely keep track, whether it's the state level or even the federal level.
Well, it's interesting because, again, I think that our shows, Joey, are a good example of two very different brands that appeal. And I say it all the time. Obviously, I say it about my good friend John Hines, who is the editor in chief of the Hudson County View, great news site here in Hudson County, where it's, meat and potatoes. It's the bread and butter of journalism, right? It's about reporting. You're talking to electeds. You're talking to candidates. You're out there in the field covering, primary debates. Again, I got to, meet you in person for the first time last year at Rider University. I had the pleasure of meeting your mom, who's terrific. Being there physically present at Rider University in the theater, covering both debates for both the Republicans and the Democrats. And, again, I remember you at the media scrum. Obviously, you're asking good questions. I think I was too. But I think what's interesting about the big tent you mentioned is there is room, what I would argue, for different types of media brands. And, some of the grief I get here, especially in Hudson County, from a lot of journalists that don't like me is, well, Fernando's too opinion-based. Fernando's not, well, again, but that's not what I'm good at. Like, I could sit there and be you, Joey. Maybe not as good as you, but I could be what you're doing, the meat and potatoes, the bread and butter, the same thing with John Hines or Aaron Morrill with the Jersey City Times, like straight reporting. This is like the sky is blue, water's wet. Again, I'm not saying that's boring. I'm saying, but it's the meat and potatoes of it. I'm more of like, yeah, the sky is blue, but I don't know. I think it's a little cloudy, and that sucks. Like, that's just what I do. And again, doesn't make me better than anybody. But I think what you and I have excelled at, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is I think that we've developed media brands that really show the evolution of journalism and media. Listen, again, the days of print newspapers, we saw obviously the dissolution of the print newspaper and the Star Ledger, obviously, where it's now digital. We saw, newspapers, physical newspapers, like, for example, where I live, The Jersey Journal was existing for over 150 years here in Hudson County. That went out of business. Okay. We're seeing the digital brands, the Patches, the Tap Intos. We're seeing podcasts like yours, like mine, other independent news sites growing to where, like, I take exception with old school journalists that are just like, well, if you didn't go to school for a journalism degree or a communications degree, you don't get to call yourself a journalist. Like, no way. I won't accept that. And as far as I'm concerned, because I get this grief from a lot of journalists, whether it's, clowns like David Cruz, Tom Moran, and that collective group of really of imbeciles that, hey, well, Uribe's not really a journalist. They might even say, well, Joey Bloch might not be a journalist because he didn't do it supposedly the right way. I call bullshit on that. I just say, like, media's evolved, journalism is involved, and I think technology and podcasting has enabled guys like you and I to go and get credentials and be in a media scrum and say, hey, by the way, we're journalists, whether you like it or not, we're here, we're not going away.
The media landscape has definitely changed for sure. Even just in the last 5 years, I think COVID kind of pushed that, where you've seen the rise of the podcasters, the alternative sites, the alternative media, where these, old mom and pop establishment media organizations don't necessarily have the same reach that they once did. If you look at, rest in peace Star Ledger, where now it's a digital format, NJ.com, where the subscribers have gone down significantly. And some people might argue they might not cover the same stories that, people are concerned about, or the right ones. And, obviously Brent Johnson, love him. He does a lot of good reporting, but there are some people who, may not necessarily grab the essence of what you and I are talking about, that their stories mixed, like, especially during the education issues back in 2021 and 2022, where if you looked at a lot of the coverage, you really didn't see a lot of it. You only saw it in certain outlets. It didn't bubble up to the surface until much later on, where the bread and butter issues are sometimes the ones that are messy. That may not be the clean ones, the careful ones, that you kind of have to cover them and find a way to do it. Now, whether it's like you, who is an opinionated journalist, and by the way, you've come a long way over the past 5+ years, and you're doing great work, and we value that because we have to have you. And then you also have to have the people that are in the middle right now. And I think that is almost the concern, is that when the establishment media doesn't embrace the alternative, it almost pushes people further in the alternative and might push people towards alternative media that might not necessarily be healthy. Like you and I, we research what we're doing. We try to keep people informed. We try to be as accurate as we can. Maybe sometimes we have a screw up here and there, but we try to keep it where some other people may not. They might use it for different purposes. And that's what the establishment media has to realize. They either have to become part of the alternative and embrace it, or they might be swept away from it. And that could cause people to be more divided in our country and lead to outcomes where maybe we are more polarized. You have more extreme candidates running because of the media environment. It's something we have to keep in mind. It's all about balance. And I think that's what you and I try to do. And I think this is the future. This is it. Yep. Either get on the bandwagon or get off the train. And it just shows you don't need a multi-million-dollar operation to tell people the facts and what the story is, and that it really can be done by regular people. And I think that's what you're going to see going forward.
Joey, listen, I say this on this show all the time when it comes to certain establishment media, whether it's been people that have been in the business forever, whether it's a Star Ledger, whether it's NJ.com, NJ Spotlight News, NJ TV. I've been saying it forever. I mean, the meteor's coming. Like, you people like you and I, we're the meteor. For a lot of these journalistic dinosaurs in New Jersey, like, we're the meteor. We're not stopping. So I say that all the time, not to be bombastic. Well, sometimes maybe, but I say it to be truthful. I mean, again, the business has changed dramatically. Whether we listen, case in point, we look at the New Jersey Globe and our good friend David Wass. Again, I would argue that the New Jersey Globe is the pinnacle of news in this state. I mean, David is working at all hours. When you and I are sleeping, or I'm binge watching a show at 1 or 2 in the morning, or I'm playing video games, like David's working. Okay. I mean, David is Batman. I mean, the guy doesn't sleep. Okay. And there's a reason why the traffic, the metrics are always in his favor. He's breaking stories. He's producing great power lists better than other people. He's producing great segments and specials. Like we'll see, I think later tonight. I think he has an online special about assessing Governor Murphy's 8 years. We saw that during the primary. I mean, nobody did debates better than the New Jersey Globe, obviously in conjunction with on NJ News, with Rider University. But just on a day-to-day, we see the great work by the New Jersey Globe. We see it by the New Jersey Monitor with Terrence McDonald. Not a fan of his politics for the most part, but he's a good writer. I mean, and obviously he has a group of reporters that are breaking stories. We see, again, NJ.com. I mean, I can't imagine spending a nickel on the paywall there, but that's, or Politico. Not because I dislike Matt Friedman, because he's lazy too, but I think that the reason that independent media and, brands like yours, mine, and others, I think is thriving, as well as, for example, Central Jersey Newswire, my good buddy Charlie Cradaville with New Brunswick Today, a great local news site. I think it's great to see these local news sites thriving and also surviving. But I think also too showing us that we can reinvent the wheel a little bit and not sort of fall back into bad practices, which I think a lot of the establishment media, Joey, engaged in for some time. And, when they're dying out, it's by their own doing. It's not about metrics. It's not about, podcasters are corrupting the echo chamber. No, we're not doing any of that. I think what we're doing is reporting. We're giving people content that's different. And people gravitate to Joey Bloch. People gravitate to Fernando Uribe. People gravitate to others in the independent media sphere. And we're not going away anytime soon, as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely, that's for sure. I mean, people want relatability, and that's what they see now in these podcasts. You don't need this high-tech profile, large commercial studio. You don't need this fancy mic. I mean, people just do it on a cell phone now. I mean, look at this. I'm on my iPad, for God's sakes, Fernando, which is something like would have been unheard of even 10 years ago. You're like, you're doing this through Zoom and video, and people will be like, you can't do that. But that's exactly what we're doing. And it's real life. It's kind of like why reality television really took off. Not because people like Snooki and Kim Kardashian per se, but because it has a sense of realness to it. And it's something relatable. And yes, journalism should be about telling the stories and sticking to the facts, but it's got to have a little bit of relatability to it. If you feel like you're being talked down to, that's not really going to work. I mean, even on a political lens, that's why Donald Trump has been so successful, because he sounds like the little guy. Yes, he is a billionaire and has more money and more financial accounts than either you or I could imagine, but it's because he can relate to people in that sense. And he can also piss off a lot of people, let's be honest. But
Sure.
It's this relatability factor. And NewJersey.com or NJ.com and New Jersey Globe in particular, New Jersey Globe has really been able to change the game here.
Yeah.
They're now competitive in getting debates, which is not something you would have seen even 5 years ago. You wouldn't have seen them being able to run a majority of it and driving the coverage. It would have been a Star Ledger, an NJ.com, a Politico, something like that. And that is what we're going to see going forward, because they're getting the exclusives, they're doing the work, they're investigating it, they're down and dirty, while some of these other networks and outlets, they're not necessarily going along for that ride. And that's what you're going to see going forward. So shout out to David. He's doing great work. Charlie Cradaville as well is doing good work with New Brunswick Today. Obviously, I've interviewed him a number of times, because they go to these meetings. They cover the local stuff. Let's be honest. The funding for large New Jersey media outlets, those days are over. It's going to be New York, Philadelphia. And if you want New Jersey, you're going to have to get alternative media. That's going to be the outcome. If you don't have alternative media, there will be no New Jersey politics coverage. There'll be no New Jersey anything coverage. There'll be like a blip on Eyewitness News. Well, here's what's going on in New Jersey. And that will be it. And if you don't have that, That's it. So you'll never know what's happening in our beautiful state.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, a shout out to other great independent outlets like Central Jersey Newswire with their editor in chief, Mike DeRabio. We also have the Edison Reporter with Keith Hahn. Great reporting with them. Kind of crazy that Edison is now like the sixth largest city in the state, though. I mean, my God, I mean, the publishing is just booming down there, but it's great to have these outlets there as well as all the ones you mentioned as well. Joy, before I let you go, and folks, it's 7 o'clock here exactly on the East Coast here, right on the button. And my guest tonight is the distinguished host of In the Middle with Fox Sports New Jersey. My good friend Joey Bloch here joining us live on Real Talk. Folks, again, like, comment, and share tonight's episode. It takes 5 seconds to show your support for fearless independent media here with Jersey First TV. Joey, I know you alluded to it a little bit before, but it's 2026. We have primary races. We also have county commissioner races with no county line. These are going to be very interesting for sure throughout New Jersey. Obviously, we have a U.S. Senate race. Tell us about some big things coming up for In the Middle in 2026 in your brand of reporting coming up.
Well, we're going to be finishing off our coverage of New Jersey 11th District. We'll have Chatham Councilman Justin Strickland. He's going to be on this week on the show Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m. Fox Sports New Jersey, 1450 a.m. If you're in the area, and you can get that on the AM dial and the FM dial, it's 93.5 FM. And you can go to foxsportsradionewjersey.com as well to get that too. But that's what we're going to be focusing on, candidates, and really diving into these themes about Republicans. Can they build some momentum here? Democrats, can they hold on to the momentum? Could we see some independents in the race? That's a big part of this. And also, on a curious note, I want to see if there are any people who are like with the political establishment, you know what? If they can't do it, I'll do it myself. The do-it-myself candidates, I really want to see what they're able to do, how much money they're able to generate. Maybe it's wealthier candidates putting their own money towards it. Who knows? Maybe it'll be someone like you, Fernando, where it's a podcaster who decides to run. They're just some regular old citizen who's just like had enough of the way things are and want to change things. Those are some people I'd love to talk to. And we'll be seeing, and we'll maybe try and get out on the road a little bit and see who we can talk to.
Absolutely. Great stuff there. Joy, before I let you go, again, I always thank you for your time. It's very valuable. I know you're very busy. You do great stuff with your work with Fox Sports New Jersey. I know, obviously, your entire family solidly behind you. Shout out to Mama Bloch. I'm a big fan of your mom there, who's always so supportive. I mean, she's great. Running into her and meeting her for the first time last year. Hope to see her more on the campaign trail here, obviously, in 2026. You're always doing good work, man. God bless you. And I shouldn't be surprised. You're a fellow Rutgers alumnus, so we're just great at everything we do. But I'm going to thank you for your time tonight. I'll give you the last word here on Real Talk.
Well, thank you, Fernando. I appreciate the kind words. It's always an honor to come on and talk to you about the latest issues in politics. Hopefully, I'll be back again soon. And we're going to see what this wild 2026 has in store for us here. Is it going to be a year Republicans fight back? It's going to be a year Democrats dominate. I'm looking forward to that. And hopefully, I'll be back here to talk to you. So thank you very much for having me.
Brother, you'll be back on anytime you want. I always hit you up and we always coordinate. I love being on your show. It's folks, if you don't listen to Joey Bloch regularly, what are you waiting for? Make sure you like Fox Sports New Jersey on Facebook. Follow him on Instagram and X. And just for our audience, Joey, real quick here, any URLs for our audience, when your show airs, and all your handles for our audience tonight.
Oh boy, I got a lot. So hopefully you don't cut me off here. But the basics, website, foxsportsradionewjersey.com/podcast. Again, that is foxsportsradionewjersey.com/podcast. You can go there. You can go right and find In the Middle with Joey Bloch. You click on that, and all the episodes will be there. You also are on Spotify. You can go there too. Apple Podcasts. We are building that out like crazy now. You can get exclusive content there that we don't get on the air. So be sure to go there. And we put out the new episodes every Saturday morning right after the air. So around 9 o'clock, you'll see that. But you should check us out on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey at 8:30. Again, you can go to foxsportsradionewjersey.com to do that. If you are in the Central Jersey area, you can tune in to 1450 AM, and on the FM dial, it is 93.5 FM. So be sure to tune into all that. And thank you again, Fernando, for having me on, and appreciate the compliments from my mom there. You're way too kind, and you're very generous.
Brother, I always appreciate talking to you, man. Folks, he is the host of In the Middle on Fox Sports New Jersey. And I can tell you right now, pound for pound, one of the best journalists out there in New Jersey, folks. He's Joey Bloch, our guest tonight. Joey, have a good rest of your night. We'll talk to you throughout this election season. Keep up the good work. And thank you for believing in Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Have a great night, brother.
Thank you too, Fernando.
Have a good one. Take care.
You too. Goodbye.
Folks, good stuff there with Joey Bloch, the host of In the Middle on Fox Sports New Jersey. And again, our guest tonight here on Real Talk. And folks, if you just joined us live, again, you haven't missed anything. Again, you can always tune in for the replay, share it on your social media platforms, and show your support for, again, another great independent journalist here in New Jersey, Joey Bloch, with his show In the Middle, which you can listen to on weekends via Fox Sports New Jersey. Folks, if you don't follow him on Instagram or X, or follow him on Facebook, again, it takes a few seconds to support a fellow Rutgers alumnus and a great and outstanding young journalist in New Jersey. He's Joey Bloch, folks, our guest tonight here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. Folks, it's a little after 7 o'clock here on the East Coast. Can't say it enough here. Again, we appreciate you tuning in here. Like, comment, and share. Helps the show grow and helps show your support for fearless independent media, which you can always rely on right here with Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via the Jersey First Television Network. Yeah, folks, you know what time it is. It's time for final thoughts. And folks, yes, there's been no shortage of commentary and analysis and bloviating and pearl clutching and grandstanding and sanctimonious outrage since the death of Renee Good in Minneapolis a couple of weeks ago. Now, again, as I said last week, and I'll say it again, two things can be true at the same time. What happened was tragic. A child lost their mother, a partner lost their spouse, and the community lost one of its, I guess, vocal leaders. That's fine. And again, it's tragic. It's unfortunate. But folks, it's also avoidable. Where members of the Democrat Party, members of the establishment media, and activists somehow feel that they have all they want to do is deputize young men and women in this country to physically obstruct federal agents from doing their jobs. Now, it's unfortunate what happened with Renee Good, but again, folks, it's avoidable by not participating in activities like that. When you're part of an anti-ICE group, folks, and you go around filming ICE agents, and in many cases, doxing them, okay, and revealing their identities, revealing their residences, putting not just themselves, but their family members at risk. And I know what you want to say, folks. Oh, well, you know, cops don't walk around with masks, or FBI agents or state troopers. I get all that, folks. But you know what's interesting? How so many people are somehow pro-law enforcement or don't have anything to say about police officers or state troopers or sheriff's officers or anything else. But when it comes to ICE, it seems to be like this irrational hatred. Folks, that's what we've been seeing for years now in this country. We're seeing it here in New Jersey. Okay? And we're seeing it with the usual sanctimonious crew in New Jersey. Now, again, as you see there, I made it a point to update the collage of the usual fools and suspects here in New Jersey. Okay, whether it's Antoinette Miles with the New Jersey Working Families Party, whether it's beta males and soy boys, guys just, you know, screaming estrogen like Joe Amaditis, the director for the Center of Communications and Media at, you know, Woke State over there in Montclair, New Jersey, right? Or other, you know, Mickey Mouse journalists like Alan Steinberg, who I'm sure is asleep at this hour. Or Tom Moran, who's pretty useless. Or John Van Vliet, who I don't really care for his editorials. Or other useless humans like, you know, Bob Medina, coincidentally married to another useless human, Patty Medina. I doubt Bob's watching right now. It's 7 o'clock. It's way past his bedtime. But I had to make sure I updated the collage to include new useless people in New Jersey politics. For example, Anthony Uribe. Folks, you will not meet a more useless, and listen carefully when I say garbage, basura, elected official than Anthony Uribe. Folks, this guy grifts like a hoe looking for their next victim at a bar. That is the level of griftness that we see with Anthony Uribe. Okay? A political hoe who jumps from one cause to the other. You can't take people like Anthony Uribe seriously. Okay? Never mind the fact whenever I drive in North Bergen, I have to worry about the alignment in my vehicle because the roads are shitty. So instead of virtue signaling and clutching your pearls, Anthony, why don't you fix the roads so maybe I don't have to worry about driving over pothole after pothole in North Bergen? And speaking about clutching pearls, folks, does anybody do it better than U.S. Representative LaMonica MacGyver and her theatrics and her embarrassing behavior at Delaney Hall in Newark? She should go to jail. You want to assault a federal agent? You should go to jail. Simple as that. Now, I get it with someone as big as, MacGyver. If she sneezes on you, she's assaulting you. But nevertheless, folks, when you want to act ratchet and inappropriate in front of federal officers, there should be consequences. But of course, folks, when it comes to what's happened with Renee Good and our outlook on ICE, again, there's been no shortage of people in the collage I just mentioned. Useless government workers like Maria Rodriguez earning six figures doing nothing. Right? Or useless journalists like Charles Stile with NorthJersey.com. Or potheads like Matt Freeman, who, again, are you really doing any work, guys? What's changed from last year? I mean, nothing. Or Amy Torres with the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice. More on them later. Or journalists that somehow want to make you rethink the levels of Trump derangement syndrome that seem to be still running rampant in New Jersey, whether it's Max Pizarro, whether it's Uncle Dave, David Cruz. And by the way, I was kind of impressed because while I didn't physically see Uncle Dave last Thursday at the inauguration of Jersey City's 50th mayor, James Solomon, somehow he was able to get coverage or footage of that. I guess, well, you can just pay anybody to go get footage for you. That's fine. Or other useless elected officials like Phil Cohen in Hoboken, councilman there, or Ravi Bala, assemblyman in the 32nd Legislative District, or Nettie Morsi with Make the Road New Jersey, or other useless women like Jay Lassiter from Insider NJ, or Lauren Albrecht, or Bob Hennelly, or Kayla. Folks, again, there's no shortage of awful actors and awful human beings conveying an awful narrative about how we should look at federal agents enforcing federal immigration law. It's as simple as that. But the latest suspect, folks, and someone that, and again, prepare yourselves, Miss Photogenic herself, Jesely de la Cruz, who seems to be the executive director of the Latino Action Network Foundation. Now, folks, again, if you know anything about the Latino Action Network, they're another Mickey Mouse left-wing organization that lives to coddle illegals. Okay? That lives to coddle illegals that were responsible, obviously, in previous years for making sure that illegals got driver's licenses here in New Jersey, that makes sure that somehow our taxpayer dollars are being used to provide health care for illegals. Okay, folks, here's an education for a lot of you, especially for the, the dimwits I just mentioned on the collage. Okay. Yes, some Republicans or some right-wingers or some conservatives kind of fall into the trap of saying inaccurate information. Like, oh, illegals get health care or illegals get Medicaid. Folks, that's not true. What is true is the Medicaid dollars that come from Washington into New Jersey are reassessed into a fund that provides health care for illegals. So for illegals that are here, especially the ones with anchor babies or the ones that are pregnant here on the way, whatever, folks, they go apply for what's known as New Jersey Family Care. They'll have access to health care. And shout out to State Assemblyman Paul Canitra down the shore in Monmouth County, for really exposing the blatant misuse of federal dollars to provide health care for illegals in the amount of $7 billion a year. So if you're outraged about where your tax dollars go to, folks, you should be. Because it's people like Jessie de la Cruz that advocate for this nonsense and somehow continue with the same sob story about how to view illegals in this country. But she submitted a op-ed to NJ.com. And folks, what a surprise that NJ.com publishes garbage editorials from garbage columnists. Like, for example, Maribel Joven, an academic who, again, espouses the same bullshit left-wing propaganda like many other academics do in academia and higher education. But here's a good one here from Jessie de la Cruz, submitted last week to NJ.com about how to view ICE and what New Jersey should be doing to combat ICE and the Trump administration. Let me just read you some points here. Again, folks, if you need a cure for your insomnia, just look up a column by Jessie de la Cruz and that'll cure it right away. As you can see there, as Trump's ICE terrorizes families, New Jersey can fight back with laws. Okay, Jessie de la Cruz, obviously. There, the New Jersey legislature needs to act now to pass a package of bills to protect immigrants in our state from an out-of-control federal administration that is violating their rights and terrorizing our communities. Wait a second. An out-of-control federal administration that's violating rights and terrorizing our communities. So wait a second. So when Democrats at the federal level talk about immigration, that's okay. You'll give it a pass, right, Jesseline? But when Republicans and Donald Trump do it, oh, that's when you're going to start menstruating and everybody else is, right? Again, I don't know how old Jesseline is. I mean, I can take a guess, early mid-60s by looking at her, but maybe her memory isn't good. But Jesseline, by the way, since you want to talk about an out-of-control federal administration, do you remember this guy in 2007? You should.
Administration, the Bush administration, has done nothing to control the problem that we have. We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders since George Bush took office. It has become an extraordinary problem. And the reason the American people are concerned is because they are seeing their own economic position slip away. And oftentimes, employers are exploiting these undocumented workers. They're not paying the minimum wage. They're not observing worker safety laws. As president, I will make sure that we finally have the kind of border security that we need. That's step number one. Step number.
Oh, by the way, when elected president, the border security that we need, by the way, maybe Jesseline forgot, or clowns like Amy Torres from the New Jersey Alliance of Immigrant Justice, Antoinette Miles with the New Jersey Working Families Party, or Nettie Morrissey with Make the Road New Jersey. Anyone want to take a guess at who's deported more illegals out of the United States than Barack Obama? Guess what? No one. But it's hard to take women like Jessie de la Cruz seriously when they're clutching their pearls and they have this selective memory, which is true, folks. A lot of women have selective memory. Like they can't, some women don't know the difference between Ramapo College in Bergen County or the Electoral College, but they can remember shit from 10 years ago. It's funny about the selective memory that some women have, right? Especially Latinas, right? But let's continue here.
Number two is to take on employers. Right now, an employer has more of a chance of getting hit by lightning than be prosecuted for hiring an undocumented worker. That has to change. They have to be held accountable. Start shedding some light on the problem, and we can once again be a nation of laws and a nation of immigrants. That's what I intend to do as president of the United States.
Oh, wow. Isn't it interesting when, Democrats say that, but when Republicans say it, oh, somehow they're fascists and they're Nazis and ICE are the Gestapos. Folks, it's bullshit. It's the typical left-wing bullshit narratives that somehow, I get it, they resonate with low information voters, and God knows in New Jersey, we're full of them here, especially in Hudson County. Right? But let's continue on with this. The state assembly just passed these bills out of committee. Now we need the state senate to act before the lame-duck session ends next week. And the measures include A6310, the Immigrant Trust Directive Codification Bill, A6309, the Privacy Protection Act, and A6308, the Safe Communities Act. Together, they limit the unnecessary information sharing, create privacy protections, and ensure that safe access to essential services for immigrant families. Isn't it interesting, folks? Immigrant families. No, folks, it's for illegals. It's a scary time in our country. United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, is targeting hundreds of thousands of people for family separations, detentions, confinement, and deportation. ICE is increasing its violent activity in close proximity to schools, hospitals, and houses of worship. The threat to our lives as New Jerseyans is real. Folks, que me come mierda with Jesselie. But what else is new? Another hysterical Latina. Color me surprised. Immigrants make up almost 1/4 of our population. Our state has the nation's 5th largest immigration population. Almost 1 in 7 New Jerseyans live with at least one parent who is an immigrant. Now, see, again, folks, this is where está confundiendo apples and oranges. That's where you're confusing los huevos de araña con que me araña los huevos. People like Jesselie de la Cruz are exceptional at that. No one's talking about hating immigrants, folks. No one's talking about, ostracizing legal immigrants or people that came here the right way. But Jesselie wants to convey that nonsense. She's good at that. Not sure what else she's good for, but she's good for that. Almost 1/3 of our labor force is foreign-born. In the 1 year since Trump took office for his second administration, 3,000 New Jersey residents have been detained by ICE. In just the first half of the year, 3,201 arrests occurred. Sadly, these activities could be on the rise as ICE invests $100 billion in a hiring spree nationwide. Well, yes, folks, again, and this is what happens when you leave the border wide open like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did, okay, for 4 years and more than 10 million illegals flooded into the country. It's going to take work to fix that. Now, border crossings are really at an all-time low. But it still doesn't account for the fact that over 10 million illegals are here. You have to clean it up somehow, Jesselie. I don't know what you want to do. But for the adults like me, we have to take some measures here, and sometimes drastic ones. Right? Here's a good one here. NJ Family Care is seeing reduced enrollment due to families being afraid of signing up their children for the health insurance program. Well, that's good because guess what? Medicaid dollars that should be appropriated for citizens are being taken, and those dollars are being put into New Jersey Family Care to provide health care for illegal immigrants. And in many cases, they're anchor babies. But Jesselie wants to come at me with the sob story? Por favor. Right? Here's a good one here. Schools are seeing rising absenteeism, academic disruption, and higher rates of stress and anxiety. Folks, it's the same blah, 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 dicky from women like Jesselie de la Cruz. Folks, here's the truth. Okay? And you heard it through his own words. Then U.S. Senator in early 2008 running for President Barack Obama. And what do we see during the 8 years of Barack Obama? Record deportations. Now, I get it. People want to talk about, well, we didn't see these optics. No, folks, because what ended up happening, we saw this because, again, it takes a simple Google search to accomplish this. Okay? You can look up family separations. You can look up violent incidents that happened with the removal of illegal immigrants in New Jersey under the Obama administration. That happened, folks. That's not bullshit. But do you think the establishment media nationally or in New Jersey talked about it? Do you think clowns like Tom Moran, for example, all those years writing for the Star Ledger, talked about record deportations under Barack Obama? No, folks, not once. Do you think Max Brazzaro, when writing for Politicker NJ and then transitioning to Insider NJ, do you think Max Brazzaro ever once talked about Barack Obama and the record deportations that we saw from 2009 to 2017 under Barack Obama? You think David Cruz, when he wasn't deciding what to eat in his fridge during the entire time he was at NJTV, NJPBS, and NJ Spotlight News, you think he ever talked once about the record deportations of Barack Obama? Of course not. Folks, because that would take all the aforementioned and all the other dishonest journalists to have something that's called, wait for it, because it's a really simple word. It's a 4-syllable word that many of them struggle with. Wait for it. Integrity. They never had any. Because if you did, you'd be intellectually honest and philosophically consistent when talking about deportations. Okay? What do we see during the 4 years of the Biden administration? We saw record massive illegal immigration. We saw taxpayer dollars being used to put up illegals in hotels across this country, providing amenities for illegals. Did Jesse Lee de la Cruz once object to that? I don't know. I don't know where her financial situation is, but as a taxpayer, I objected to it. Folks, you can't take people like Jesse Lee de la Cruz seriously. Because if you were consistently outraged, be about it. Be about it. But she isn't. And very much like the Latino Action Network, which is, again, a subsidiary of the Latino Action Network Foundation, folks, they live to coddle illegals. Okay? Along with all the other insufferable organizations in New Jersey that are costing taxpayers in this state $7 billion to cater to illegals. Okay? You think Jesse de la Cruz, with a little Mickey Mouse social work degree, cares about that? Of course not. She cares about virtue signaling. She cares about selective moral outrage. And most importantly, she cares about pearl clutching. Folks, my grandmother, God rest her soul, didn't clutch her pearls and her pearl necklaces anywhere near as much as Jesse de la Cruz. But folks, these are the people we have to fight with. These are the people that we have to deal with. The Latino Action Network. Folks, when I think of the Latino Action Network, when I think about them organizing themselves, or I think about, I don't know, them mobilizing, right, for the latest anti-ICE protest or advocating for illegals. You know what I think about, folks, when I think about Jesse de la Cruz and I think about the Latino Action Network, you know what comes to mind when they get to the office? You know what it reminds me of? That is the Latino Action Network and their employees going to work. More importantly, folks, when it comes to Jesse de la Cruz, this comes to mind.
No. You're still a loser.
Tell me where I'm wrong.
Clown show. It's a clown show.
Folks, that is the best way to summarize esta mujer. Another hyper-hysterical Latina that doesn't know what she's talking about. But what else is new, folks, when it comes to New Jersey activism? They're full of them. We are saturated with insufferable, know-nothing Latinas, their pearl clutching, and their selective moral outrage. Folks, it's hard to take women like this seriously when they virtue signal as much as Jesse de la Cruz. Folks, you need a cure for insomnia? Look up her column. That's all it's good for. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, a special comment tonight. Again, as we continue on with the selective moral outrage about ICE and about anti-ICE protests, it reminds me of the typical toxicity that we see in our political climate, which is really liberal white women, right? And far left progressive activists that continue on with the same nonsense, denouncing ICE, somehow thinking that enforcing federal immigration law is something to be vilified and demonized. No, folks. Trust me, the same people that are vilifying ICE, that are vilifying our hardworking men and women with immigration and customs enforcement, okay, who do a dangerous job every day. Folks, I can tell you right now, I'm proud to say I stand with ICE. I do. I got no problem saying that out loud because they have a tough job of enforcing federal immigration law. Because guess what, folks? For all the sob stories that Jesse de la Cruz, and you see it on the social media of all these other idiots in New Jersey, Maria Rodriguez, Nadia Morsi, Lauren Albrecht, other useless women like Jay Lassiter, Bob Hennelly, okay, Antoinette Miles, Amy Torres, take your pick, folks, Patricia Campos Medina, okay? What they forget is they're the exact same people who conveyed bullshit during the pandemic. And if you don't believe me, folks, just look up their socials. But these are the exact same people who talk out of both sides of their mouth, because while illegal immigrants have murdered American citizens, black, white, Hispanic, you name it. Not once, somehow, all the aforementioned people I just listed will cry you a river of tears for Renee Good, but not once for any of these poor young men and women victimized by the violence of illegal immigrants. Okay? Not once. Okay? Or these poor, remember them because you know what? The establishment media doesn't. You think Max Pizarro remembers? Of course not. He's too busy scratching his ass at home. Okay? Earning $100,000 a year. Ahí rascándose los huevos because he doesn't do anything. David Cruz, I mean, if you can see it, well, let me clarify. If David Cruz could see his huevos, I don't know if that's true or not. We doubt that. But again, not once will you ever hear Uncle Dave talk about people like this or remembering people victimized by illegal immigrants. Or Tom Moran, or Bob Hennelly, or Alan Steinberg, or John Van Vliet, or Jay Lasser. Not once do you ever hear about the outrage. You'll hear about the pearl clutching, okay? And somehow their vaginas are all hurt about standing up for ICE agents doing a very difficult job ridding our communities of violent illegals. Not once, folks, not once. Okay? Poor young men and women across all racial lines, victimized by illegal immigrants. And you think for once that any of the people I just listed would have any sort of sympathy. No, of course not. They'd rather virtue signal and demonize hardworking men and women, as if any of the people I just listed ever work hard. I mean, really? Okay. But the best way and the best counter for anyone that you see on your social media feeds, folks, about ICE and oh my God, and the Gestapos, folks, watch this. And this is the best material you'll ever have against all these idiots on your social media feeds and everyone I just listed who don't have an ounce of credibility to talk with.
That supports ICE probably would have turned over Anne Frank too. You guys supported vaccine passports. You fucking cheered when police shut down church services during COVID. You encouraged your neighbors to snitch on people. You guys legit created a fucking hotline to call and snitch on people if they had more than fucking 5 people over for Easter. You suggested that anybody who supports Trump should go to a re-education camp. You backed mask mandates for toddlers. You fucking doxed people for making political donations. You supported FBI surveillance of parents. You applauded arrests of political opponents. You guys are the real schmazzies. And you're fucking domestic terrorists to boot. You guys also made hate speech tip lines to report people who say shit that you don't like. You guys wanted to ban books about American history. We just wanted to ban books that had sexual content for children. And you want to know what? I wouldn't have turned Anne Frank over because she was a legal citizen. Anybody that's...
Folks, you see what I'm saying? These are the people we have to deal with. The same people that did all the aforementioned are now clutching their pearls and now being all sanctimonious. And by the way, speaking about Barack Obama and his immigration policies, anyone care to remember back in 2015 when Barack Obama awarded a Distinguished Medal of Service award to, wait for it, to Tom Homan, the same border czar that worked under Barack Obama and has worked under both Trump administrations? It seems like a lot of you on the left and progressives want to demonize Tom Homan. Somehow Barack Obama thought it was worth giving a medal of distinguished. Folks, do you realize the amount of federal employees that there are in this country? And to give a Distinguished Medal of Service to someone like Tom Homan, do you know what that means, folks? I mean, you're in the upper echelon of federal employees. That's what Barack Obama held in high regard. Oh, but because Donald Trump does, now you want to vilify him? And border agents and ICE agents? This is why you can't take the left seriously. This is why you can't take, folks, anyone I just mentioned seriously. Folks, you got your ammunition. You got your talking points. So next time somebody wants to clutch their pearls about ICE or anything else, play those videos. Share this video, comment, and show it to people. Because like many on the left, yeah, it seems like their heart's in the right place, but let's be honest, folks, their head's up their ass. And that's not changing anytime soon. Whether it's Jesse de la Cruz or everyone else I listed, you're pretty useless, but we all knew that. And that's my special comment. Folks, that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank Joey Bloch, the host of In the Middle with Fox Sports New Jersey, of course. Check him out whenever you can on all of his social media platforms, and his episodes are great. Very, very educational and insightful, folks, every weekend. Check him out on Fox Sports New Jersey. Folks, I can't remind you enough, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and X. Don't forget to subscribe to Real Talk on YouTube. And of course, folks, make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify or SoundCloud and check out Jersey First and all our great content that we bring you every single week. Folks, I can't say it enough here again, leading the way, educating, navigating for the great residents here in the state of New Jersey. As you know, it's always a Jersey First TV. Again, brand new episodes of Real Talk air every Monday night live at of course, check your local listings for start times as we're working every week, folks. I can't say the same for other journalists in New Jersey, but we're working every week here on the Jersey First Television Network. Always remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is indeed Real Talk on the Jersey First Television Network. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, as you all know, I'll continue to be the generational talent in Garden State Media, and of course, your hero and the leader for trustworthy journalism. That's right, folks. It's always me, Fernando Uribe. Folks, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy Championship Sunday in the NFL, of course. Enjoy yourselves. Please party responsibly. Stay warm, folks, as it'll get colder this week. Again, please drive safely. Please party responsibly. And I'll see you next Monday night here for the latest edition of Real Talk on Jersey First TV. Folks, thanks for stopping by. Always remember, stay classy, everyone.